So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to add materials to objects, and in the next tutorial we'll go over how to map the materials. But for now, let's apply some materials to these objects. So first one, we're going to add a wooden texture to the box, and then a metal and glass texture to the table, and then a metallic paint to this car chassis here. So first off, let's have a look at our scene. So this is what the objects will look like in your default render. So to add our first material, we're going to open the asset editor. And then on this left tab here, you'll click the arrow. And V-Ray comes with a set of default materials that you can use. And I much prefer to use the default V-Ray materials as they are already mapped properly and they look the best. So let's go down to wood and laminate here, and then we'll choose a wood texture to apply. You can of course use your own materials, however we'll go over that later. As the default V-Ray materials already have the mapping and texture applied to them. So we'll choose this floor material. So go right click, add the scene. And then all your materials show up in this tab here, which is under this circle on the left. Then if you click here on the right arrow, it'll bring up an editor which shows all the parameters to the material. Most materials you can't change the color just from this slider here. You have to actually change that in the material image itself. So essentially a V-Ray material is just an image that's placed onto a surface. Then of course you got all these other mappings that give it the texture and the 3D look to it. So if you want to use your own material, you can click here under color where it says texture slot. You can load on the image, but V-Ray comes with the default images. You can also change the reflection of your materials under here by changing the reflection glossiness. So if you want, as you can see, no light to be reflected off it, you can turn this down or increase it if you want it to make it look more polished and new. We won't worry about these other settings for now, as just the reflection is generally the most basic one you use. So to apply this to our object, we're going to select our object in the scene. So make sure your object is highlighted in yellow. Then you right click on the material and go apply to selection. There are other ways to apply the materials. Another way is right clicking and then going apply to layer. So as you can see, your layers show up on the right here, and you can apply it to all of one layer if you would like. So as you can see, the material is now under this. So when you highlight an object and then click on this object icon here, it will show you which material you have. So for the table, there's no set material, so it comes up as a white layer material. So if you were to set a material for the layer, it would show up under here. So let's have a look at what our block looks like. So we can increase the reflection, and it makes the surface slightly more reflective. Let's go close and have a look. So you can see the light is reflecting slightly more on it. And then if we were to turn the reflection down, you can see the light is no longer reflecting on the material. So that's basically how you add a wood texture. Now for our table, we'll apply a glass and a steel texture for the legs of the table. So you'll find on the metal, there's plenty of metal textures to apply. Now we'll just go with the aluminium. So add that to our scene, and then for the top of the table it will be glass. So we'll choose our glass, and we'll just go with a simple glass window neutral. So the legs of the table are selected, so on our aluminium we'll go right click, apply to selection, and the same thing for the glass. So you can see now the table has the materials applied. So let's adjust some of the parameters on our material. So when we adjust it under here, it will show up under the V-Ray interactive view. So for the glass, you can also increase or decrease the opacity of it. So under the opacity tab here, you can turn it down to make the glass more opaque. So it means you cannot see as much light through it. So there goes a bit harder to see through it. And you can also make the glass more reflective, depending on the reflection IOR. It takes a lot of playing around with these settings to get it looking right. You can also add a tint to it using metalness. You can also apply coats to it. So we'll apply a red color to it. It will tint our glass red. As you can see, it shows up in the shadow as well. So now it's the same process to apply it to this model, so we'll select it and open our asset editor. Under here you got car paint. We'll go on ahead and add this red one. Go right click, apply to selection. You can adjust the reflection and the glossiness as well. We'll keep it at the default settings. And it shows up in your render here. So you can see V-Ray does a very good job at predicting the light and making a realistic looking texture. So that's all for this tutorial. In the next one we'll be going over how to map the materials to the objects.